Okay, today we're going to be talking about the Trail of Tears. This is not a great time in American history. It's a pretty dark spot, not just because we took land from American Indians here, but how we did it is really what is egregious. There are other instances where, you know, the Indians could be blamed for starting a fight, and bad blood happens, and sometimes Americans started the fight just to try to grab land or anything like that. There's a lot of confusion, and you really have to be on the ground to truly understand it. But in this instance here, it is very hard to defend what America did. But to give you a sense of context, these actions here were not universally approved of by the American people. In fact, these votes were very, very close. So, for instance, when we talk about the Indian Removal Act in this section here, you could see that it was very close vote, just 4 votes difference. And then when we get to the treaty that actually gets them to move because of the Indian Removal Act, it passes the Senate by 1 vote. So these votes were very, very close. Now, these votes probably would not have been very close, except for the fact that Andrew Jackson comes in presidency with a certain ideology, which is really good. I mean, it helps us, move forward in the future and become a better country. But there's a downside to it, and let me explain. He wants everybody to be able to vote. And what I mean by every white male American has the ability to vote, because right up until now, even though we talked about only white males could vote, that's true. However, not all white males were allowed to vote. You had to own land, pay taxes. There may have been some other things. So very few people really had the opportunity to vote. And Andrew Jackson said, no, all white males should be allowed to vote. And so this was very popular among people. So yeah. Um, so that is why he's so popular, and people want to do what he says, and they're going to vote for their own interests. So when they find gold in on Cherokee land, on the Indians' land, people are going to want that land. They're going to want that gold. So they start giving out that land because they vote themselves the right to take that land. And that's when we get to the Indian Removal Act, where the federal government they give themselves the right to negotiate treaties with the Eastern tribes, exchanging lands for lands in the West. So they say, okay, we're going to take this land, but then we'll give you land over here that you can move to. And so that one, as I said, passed very narrowly. This was not a overwhelmingly popular idea, but it was popular enough to pass the Congress and so it went into effect, and so they started negotiating treaties. And when they negotiated a treaty with the Cherokee, that one, even though it gave Americans land and took it away from the Indians, it only passed by 1 vote. So these these votes were very, very close. America was deeply divided about what to do, but the Jackson Democrats were strong enough to get them through Congress. So what to do? The American Indians had a choice. They could fight or they can leave. And so a lot of them decided to fight, but not in the way that we're used to seeing. They're not taking up arms and trying to fight the Americans for the land in a war. Instead, they take them to court, which is the right way to do things. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what good people do. They peacefully try to settle things in court. But there was a problem. Um, the court did not recognize. So we get to our first court here, Cherokee Nation versus Georgia. The court does not recognize the American Indians as having any standing in court. They believe you have to be, a white uh, American citizen, and so you can then be heard by the court. And even though they agreed with them, they said, yeah, you got a point here. They refused to make a ruling. Well, Samuel Worcester was a missionary working with the Cherokees, and if you don't know what a missionary is, these are Christians that go into tribes and try to get them to become Christian. And he felt for the Cherokee people, so he took this to court, Worcester versus Georgia. And then the Supreme Court said, okay, we got a white person here, so we're going to rule in favor of the Cherokee. You're right. They shouldn't be made to move off their land. But Georgia and the U.S. government ignored the ruling. They said, I don't care what you say, we're going to still kick them out. So Georgia, because of self-interest, the U.S. government, Andrew Jackson, if you look at his personal history, he does not have a great relationship with American Indians. And it's unfortunate because What one tribe does to you has nothing to do with another tribe, but people like Jackson would attribute to all American Indians, and that this is when you get into bad decisions. So so they decide to kick them out of this land and force them to march all the way across here in blizzards, in droughts, and just to defend some of the American soldiers in this. Not all of them forced them to go through blizzards and droughts. There is some evidence that the commanding general told them, okay, pause the march, let them relax, keep them safe. But some of these captains, the lower ranks, they didn't care and they kept pushing them, and a lot of American Indians died on this Trail of Tears, this march that they were forced to go on. So it was not a great time in American history, but we need to remember um, our warts and all. This is what history is about. That we have to look at our mistakes and see how we can do better in the future. Why did we make these mistakes? What happened? How can we recognize? Because it's very difficult, in when you're going through things to make good decisions. It's difficult enough, but with history, you can look at these things and say, okay, I don't want to be a part of something like this. And when you see something like this happening, you can recognize it and be on the right side of history. Davy Crockett opposed this whole thing. He was the only Tennessee representative to oppose it, and so he was a man of honor, and other people just wanted the gold. So yeah, so let's read and learn and move forward from that. So thanks for tuning in. Sorry to leave you on such a down note. Next one will be a lot brighter. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for tuning in.